Hi, Brock.
Hey Liv, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I'm so excited to have you. Brock is a very inspirational man who is going to walk us through his own personal experiences and also share with us why he is so passionate about protein and the importance of choosing the right protein for your body.
Yes, looking forward to it.
So, Brock, first up, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you ended up creating whole food, natural, pretty much crap-free products
Yeah.
that really fuel the body?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's protein's always been a big part of my diet, like growing up fairly athletic and being told that protein was important. I've sort of been supplementing with protein for a fair while, probably since, sort of 17, 18. But it probably wasn't really until my mid 20s and actually founded a vegan supplement brand that I sort of understood and got to understand the real importance of protein and not just from a muscle composition standpoint, but really the other systems that it plays a significant role in. So, mood and appetite and hormones and all those types of things are regulated largely by protein. So it's been a bit of a passion of mine and certainly moving now into the sort of protein bar space. I was really motivated by just the lack of quality products that are on the market. So, when we look at Chief Nutrition, our mission is to make the world a healthier place. Now, that's a bit sort of high level, but when we look at that, we're trying to get people, and the reason we've chosen snack bars is that there's a very much an informalized eating behavior amongst the Western society as we stand. So snack bars and being able to get protein into your body at different times of the day is super important. So that's kind of the motivation behind what we're doing. And certainly, when we look at the reasons or the ways in which people are consuming protein in the Western diet, it's very much weighted towards the end of the day. It's kind of people are having like cereals or toasts for breakfast. They're having sandwiches or salads, for lunch, and then they'll have a big meaty dinner, meat and two veg or whatever it might be. And so, the snacking idea, whilst certainly leveraging that informalized eating behaviors and people eating at their desks or on the run or whatever it is important. I think being able to put protein into the body at different times of the day is super, super important. That's kind of the
Couldn't
reasons why we've sort of set ourselves in the way we have.
couldn't agree with you more. You're so right. And look, I think also sometimes for women, there's an idea that we don't need protein as much,
Yeah.
particularly like you said, at the first part of the day to really fuel us. But
Yeah.
protein is vital at every meal and snack. And I do think that we need convenient options. Like a lot of us are time poor, we have a lot on.
Yeah.
And I think you need to have your backup.
Yeah.
And that's often how I describe sometimes having your protein bars and having your protein powders. It's a way for you to stay healthy even when you feel blah or you are super duper busy.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on a really good point. Just from a marketing standpoint towards women, protein has typically been very masculine. It's been dominated by, that sort of,
Gym
well,
junkies too.
absolutely. And I mean, there's definitely a case to sort of say that that's probably, a lot of the junk protein is marketed towards men and it's not marketed in the correct way in terms of the way it can help your body. But certainly for females, it's just as important as it is for men. I think even understanding the level of protein that's required in a diet is often not really understood at all. And so, there's some really interesting things there. I mean, we target largely an athletic audience, but we're saying between 1.5 and 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, somewhere around there, which means is that about right, what you sort of work on?
Spot on. And so that's what I would say, a minimum of 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So if someone's 70 kilos, they would want to be having a minimum of 100 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
And I do like to point out at this point that that's not the weight. So for example, if you are having 100 grams of steak, that doesn't equate to 100 grams of protein. So Brock and I are specifically talking about the protein component.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to know that, you know, when we talk about that Western diet, you know, you're right, like 100 grams of steak doesn't equal 100 grams of protein. It's also important to know that you're not actually going to be absorbing 80 grams of protein in one sitting as well. The body is very limited in the amount of protein. I mean, you know better than me, we sort of work on between 25 and 40 grams of protein absorption in one sitting.
Spot on. And that's why I say every single time you look at your meals, or if you're having a snack, you want to make sure that there is protein that makes up at least a third of the plate.
Yeah. And it's really like, it's interesting. Like, I think I was just running through some of those calculations, and certainly in the way in which I consume protein. And it actually means that you really do need to be having probably, you know, 3 is a minimum amount of meals with protein in it. You need to have protein in those snacks. If you're talking about 100 grams of protein for an average person at 70 kilos, that means that you really need to be having sort of, you know, at least 3, probably 4 meals where you've got that sort of 30 grams of protein per meal. So it's super important to have it all the way through the day.
Yes. And so help us understand what, without going into too much depth, what are we looking for when it comes to easier options? And please do use your examples of the Chief bars. What are the best types of protein we can be looking for? And also with protein powders, what is your top recommendation?
So I always go to macros and ingredients. I mean, you should be able to understand what each ingredient is that's on the pack.
And read it, right? If you can't pronounce it, it's crap.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, look, we look at protein bars all day, every day, and it's scary. I mean, one of my business partners sent a photo into our sort of group chat and said, "Have a look at this product." And I honestly wouldn't feed it to a dog. It is full of that much rubbish, and their binders, their fillers, their sugar alcohols are a big one now. It's the way that, you know, big sort of food companies can put, you know, whether it's maltitol, sorbitol, whatever it might be, these artificial sugar alcohols into food, and it doesn't necessarily show up on the nutritional information panel. So it's not set out as a sugar on your macros, it's set down, but not everyone understands the way to read those macro panels. So it's really important to educate yourself around those macro panels and understand what you need to shoot for. In terms of protein bars, you know, we like to balance our protein bars in terms of protein, fats, and sugars. So in a Chief bar, in our collagen bar, you know, there's 2 grams of sugar per 45 gram bar. Now that's like sort of world class. Like, there's very few that can get to that level. But that's because we use whole foods. We use 55% nuts, we use 25% collagen, and then we're using things like coconut and bamboo fiber and things like that, which are able to give the product body, but are also easily digestible by the body. So clean label would be the number one thing to look at, understand exactly what those ingredients are, and then choose something which is very, very low sugar. In terms of format of protein, you know, it doesn't matter too much. Some people like a whey protein. Some people like vegan protein. For me, I've found, I'm not vegan, but I've found that vegan protein works really well just in terms of digestibility. The other thing is that there's fewer ingredients in a vegan protein. So the New Zest protein is the one that I go to. That's, you know, biased. I help create that brand, but it's it is clean. It's you know, doesn't have fillers and all those types of things. Really high protein, 78% protein. And it's low carb as well, which can be great for people who are looking at keto diets or just carb appropriate diets.
Definitely. And I think that's what I love about the New Zest protein powder, because typically as Australians, we consume 2 to 3 times more sugar than we should. So a lot of people say, should I be on a low carb diet? Possibly not, but we should all be making an effort to reduce our carbs and increase our protein and our veg. And when you know, veggies are still carbs, and that's probably the best source of carbs you can get is from your veg.
Yeah.
So, and I do love how versatile the protein powders can be, just in terms of, you know what, you can have it in a smoothie, you can have a shake. I often use it and we'll stir it in with like birch and muesli for the kids, or you can even use it in baking. You know, you can use it if you're making bliss balls, date balls, those sorts of things. So I think it just, once you have it, you'll figure out so many different ways that you can start to utilize it.
Yeah.
And just going back to what we said before, typically too, when you up your protein, you'll feel way more satisfied.
Yeah.
And you'll often find when you're having, you know, like as I said, if a third of your plate is protein, you will naturally reach for less sugar, less starches, less stimulants, because you're going to feel really nourished.
Yeah. And I think that's almost a misconception in the Western diet, is that, you know, carbs are what fill you up. It's kind of like, oh, I'll have more pasta or more mashed potato, and that's what's going to create that satiety. But it is that protein, and it's a balance between protein and fat, which allows that sort of satiety to come in. So, you know, with the collagen bars that we have under the Chief brand, that's a great balance, because one, collagen is actually about 40% more satiating by weight compared to a whey protein, but also the combination of the fats from the nuts means that it's super, super filling. So one of those bars, a 45-gram bar at sort of, you know, 10:30 or 11 o'clock is your sort of mid-morning, or at sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon is your mid-afternoon snack, means that you're not going to keep reaching for little bits of this, little bits of that, and really sort of throw out your macros, because that's we notice that snacking is the one part that probably plays the biggest role in throwing people's macros out. They're kind of like, I'm eating well for breakfast, lunch and dinner, but then it's the snacks. And unfortunately, the snacks which are on the market are a really good way to throw those macros completely out. So you can have, you know, and even some of those bars which are marketed as healthy, and, you know, a whole food date bar, you know, there's different ones on the market which are based on dates, but they'll be 40% sugar. So
Dates,
you're looking at...
yeah, dates are like so high. That's why they're called nature's lollies. Guys, if you have dates, have one. Like they are, it's funny too, like per 100 grams, there's the same amount of sugar as like a Snickers bar when we're talking about dates, you know? So yeah, I do agree with you, Brock. I think often, although they'll throw in not just dates, but glucose, and they'll just start sneaking in. And going back to what Brock said before, look at the label and just count. You know, you even want to count your natural sugars, but definitely anything with a number, it means it's an additive. And that's the sign to like put it back on the shelf, because you do not need it.
Yeah. And it's, you know, we're seeing now in the market, it's almost a minimal amount of ingredients, whilst great, is being used as a sort of synonym for health. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. So, you know, there's bars on the market now that sort of say, we've only got 5 ingredients. It's dates, egg whites, cashew nuts, cacao, blah, blah, blah. That's fantastic. But dates being the number one, if that's 45 grams of bar weight and you're looking at 40% sugar, that's pretty much most of your daily intake of sugar in that one bar. So it is important, whilst, you know, we're talking about whole foods, and definitely be aware of some of those artificial products, it's really important to still calculate the natural sugars applied.
Yes, couldn't agree with you more. And so I think too, the real message here is, guys, you want to make sure you're having quality protein. Like Brock and I said, it's 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight. So you're going to have to eat protein at brekkie, lunch and dinner. And if you're having a snack, you're going to need to incorporate protein in. And keep in mind that protein isn't for bodybuilders. It is for all of us, for hormonal health, metabolic health. Don't forget immunity. I mean, in order for your antibodies, which come out firing, you know, with pathogens and toxins, antibodies are a protein, and they need you to be consuming protein so that they can be produced. So, you know, in terms of your whole body functioning to its best, we want to focus on protein. And it's probably the number one macronutrient that I first get people to look at. I get them to eat 5 to 6 veggies a day, and I get them to bump up their protein, so they're having protein every meal and snack. So, Brock, it would be really awesome if you're open to me just sharing your information, and also I'm going to add in What's your favorite flavor, can I ask, of the new zest?
I like the vanilla. I mean, vanilla's it's probably just because some of those things that you mentioned. It's versatile. You can use it in a smoothie. You can use it in, bircher or something like that. It's great. So that's my go-to.
Cool. I'm going to add that one in. I love that one. I get very torn as well with the cookies and cream flavor. So we're going to include all of that information for you guys. If you have any questions, please let myself know, or you can connect with Brock as well. Thanks so much for your time, Brock.
Thanks, Liv.
Bye.
Bye.